Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to Inspirational Journeys Through Life with Straight Talk with Nolan. My name is Nolan Pillay, and I am your host today. And I'd like you to welcome Emily to our call today. So, Emily is a holistic health and strength coach who lives by movement and nutrition as medicine and pleasure. She has firsthand experience quitting medications and coping with diagnosis in a natural way through mindset, movement, nutrition, and stress management. And I like this line very much as well because I'm totally against putting any toxins into my body, although I know that modern medicine does work, etc. But I like Emily's style in this way. She's also being in touch with their own energy, allows her to live in alignment, in harmony with the environment, and attract more love, joy, and freedom into her life. She is continuously growing and healing through self awareness and self love practices. I think that's something we all need to practice. Her passion lies in spreading the word on the ability of our bodies to heal themselves if we allow them to. And this is quite a good topic that we're going to be touching on today as well, because I've had some personal experiences on self healing, and Emily's got a whole lot to tell us about as well. So, Emily, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on Inspirational Journeys Through Life with Straight Talk with Nolan. We really look forward to our conversation today. So, can you tell our listeners, just in about 2 to 3 minutes, a bit more about who Emily is?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I'm happy to speak on the subject and just share a little bit more about my experiences and what I've gone through. I guess a little bit more about me. I uh, I've started this journey, getting to know myself better. Started a long time ago. If I had to say, my first, uh, I guess, sense of self-awareness might have been back in middle school, but really rapidly increased over time with other experiences that I've had, getting older, getting to understand what I like, what I don't like in terms of activities, food, people, energies, all of that stuff. And I'm in a place right now in my life where I feel more comfortable and confident in who I am, what I like, what I enjoy, how I react with or interact with my environment, the people around me, all of that stuff. And I've kind of connected with myself through fitness. That was one of the first big ways that I was able to really feel like I could take control over my body and my mind, because I used fitness as a tool for me to help my depression that I was experiencing a while ago. And I just recognized that every time I worked out, every time I got to move my body, I just felt so much better. So that kind of threw me into a spiral of health and understanding how I react with medications and other things that I put into my body, and just logging and taking note of all of that. Um, and so now I'm in a place where I know, I feel like I know, and I'm still learning though. It's lifelong learning of understanding what I put inside and how I feel and how I react, um, as well as what I consume, like in
Yeah.
terms of information and all of that stuff, because there's more than just food nourishment. There's also spiritual nourishment and intellectual nourishment. So
Wow.
that's how I feel about it.
You've been through a lot, right? Just by listening to that short snippet that you mentioned, and just by having a look at your profile as well. So, what was like the turning point? When did you realize that you needed to make a change in your life? When did that happen? Maybe just speak around how long ago it happened and what was that trigger point? Because we all go through so much in life, and sometimes we just stay stuck and stuck and stuck until something triggers and says, "Well, you need to do something about it, like now."
Hmm. Yeah, so I was in college in 2015 or so. I would say that's when it started, but at that point in time, I didn't really know what was going on. I would say what really woke me up to it was maybe in 2016 or 17 when um, I went to my doctor and he made me aware of kind of what was going on. It was like everything connected, and I was able to put the dots together on different moments in my life that kind of led me to that realization that I had. So everything from like 2015 to that point, I just wasn't aware of the difference in how I was feeling. Like it might have been there a little bit, because I recognized too that I didn't feel like I was the same person that I was like a few years before then. And if something felt a little bit off, I just didn't feel as energetic. I didn't feel as happy. I didn't feel as joyous. I didn't feel good as often. And there were probably only a handful of times in a span of a couple years that I could remember feeling like really fulfilled and nourished, happy. So when I went to my doctor for an annual checkup for like a physical, um, and here in the States, from when I went back from college, I went home and went to all my doctor's appointments. I was telling him, I was filling him in on what was going on in my life, and he told me that I was depressed. And I didn't really understand what that meant. I was confused, but also at the same time, it made everything make sense to me. It was almost like, yeah, that was what I needed, that bit of information to understand, to put me in this
Yeah.
period of forward learning on everything that's happening around me and how I can change it for myself. So that was really the moment where I was like, wow, I don't know what that means. I actually looked it up on the internet. I was like, what does it
What
mean to be
depression?
depressed?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, what's depression? I don't know what that is. Um, I didn't really have friends growing up that were experiencing that, or if they were, they weren't really open with me about it, and no family members either. So from my experience, I just didn't really know how to handle it. Um, my doctor wanted me to go on antidepressants and also see a therapist, but I didn't end up doing either, because I wasn't really sure about therapy at that time. I know it's very helpful, but I was a little bit scared to talk about the experiences that I was having. And with the antidepressants, I wanted to wait on those because I was already on another prescription drug for ADHD.
Yeah.
And I had this feeling inside of me that the ADHD was a big part of the problem that I had, like being depressed. So I kind of flashed forward in my mind. I was like, I'm not about to start taking all these pills to treat symptoms that I'm getting from other pills. So I want to see if I can just take some time to think about this and work it out on my own and see if there's another way that I could go about handling my depression.
Wow. I like that, right? There's so many key points you mentioned there, and one of it is what you just said now towards the end is you had to find another way to try and resolve this rather than take all these toxins and put it into your body as well. Because you and I know, right? There's a lot of people that we know in our circles that live on these antidepressants and stuff because they believe in their mind that there is no other way out except just take this medication. But what they fail to realize is in the long run, it will definitely catch up with them because what it does basically is it's going to just eat up at our organs, right? And it's going to come to some point where it's going to really, it damages us all the way. So I'm glad that you made all of these decisions. When you were connecting the dots, you were connecting the dots, right? Trying to look at your life up to the certain point and try to figure out what was going wrong. Do you think a lot of it came from, I'm not sure where you come from, but where it's like a lot of conditioning and not enough mentors or coaches or even like uncles that could sit or aunties that could sit and say, you know what, I think you are going into a depressive state or so. Did you not have those
Yeah,
resources available?
that's a great point, and I've honestly never thought of that before. I knew that my environment had something to do with it because I grew up in California, in the States, and I was going to school across the country on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. I went to Penn State University, and I wanted to do that. I wanted to have like a really big change in my life. I'd never experienced seasons before. I didn't know what it was like to be around snow. And honestly, for the first year, it was really exciting. I was having such a good time. Everything was brand new. But then the year after that, it like got old. I was tired of it. And honestly, in my blood work, this is really interesting to me. I actually developed a vitamin D deficiency. I didn't have enough vitamin D in my body. I wasn't getting as nearly as much sun as I used to living in California, because living in California, my lifestyle was I'm going to go outside in the sun. I'm going to hang out on the beach. I'm going to lay outside, take a nap, and just relax. Like that was a routine for me. And the sun was a really big part of how I felt just in my personal zen. And not having that as much on the East Coast was really difficult for me. I had to start supplementing, but even then, the supplements, it's really hard to uptake vitamin D unless you have like other certain vitamins in your body. And at the same time, I wasn't even near any of my family members over there. It was a college town, and I was just around tons of people my age, and they were mostly all of them were from that side of the country. And what I ended up recognizing was that without fail, every single person that I met when I was going to school there asked me where I was from, because some of them even made it out to a point to say, like, I know you're not from around here, like, you look different. And they would ask me where I was from. And then when I would say, I'm from California, they would say, oh my gosh, why did you leave? In a way that made me feel like I shouldn't have left. And like, what are you doing here? Like, it made me feel almost, I feel like so many people asked me that question, and it started to have me second guess, like, what am I doing here? Like, do I belong here? Like, this feels like, I mean, just confusing. I was like, why did I leave California? Like, I don't, it just got into my head, and it was very confusing. And I think that that had a lot to do with it. Just not really feeling like I didn't have a sense of belonging
Yeah.
or like a sense of home there. And I think it was really that I just didn't have a sense of home, like in myself, wherever I like was in that moment. But that was really challenging to work through, knowing that I stood out to people, that I was different, which I don't think is a bad thing,
Yeah.
but it made me think that it was.
Did you feel like excluded at some point while you were there? Or you always
I
part
think,
of your circle?
yeah, I mean, I had so many friends, and so many good people around me, but I think I just still felt alone. Like nobody could relate to me.
Yeah.
Like nobody understood where I was coming from because I was from California, and things were just different. And it's not a bad thing. I had always, even before that point, embraced the differences between individuals, and I think it's so amazing. And how we can live like different lives and have different experiences and different opinions. But
Yeah.
it was like my thoughts changed like
Yeah.
after being there, and it was like working against me in a way.
I think what it could be as well, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here as well. Far too often, when we get taken out of our comfort zones and put into an uncomfortable, let's call it an area, then we do feel like the struggle at first because, of course, we're now in an uncomfortable environment and we have to kind of pick up the pieces and start the rebuild in a way, right? But the one thing we don't realize, and I'm sure you experienced this on your journey, when you were in this uncomfortable situation or uncomfortable environment, some of your best learnings and growings would have come out from there, right? Because if
Yeah,
you had,
definitely.
yeah, if you had been back in California in your comfort zone, how were you able to grow as a person?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, and that's what I honestly live in, and that's one of the reasons why I left as well. And from it all too, I mean, it was just a really long learning experience of all of that. But I'm so grateful for everything that I experienced going to school there. And I even lived in New York a little bit after that as well. So it wasn't like the environment specifically was like really holding me down. I felt like I could really work through it and be with myself and kind of being there. Um, but yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just so much of a better person going through that experience. And I embrace
the change.
trying new things and really getting out there because if you, like you said, if you don't get out of your comfort zone, how are you going to grow and learn and really find out for yourself what could happen?
Yeah, we never grow in that way. This comfort cage, that the moment we in this cage, we think that we shouldn't get out, right? Because we're so content with everything that we have. It's only when we go through situations in life that pushes us, to say, okay, use this as an opportunity to learn whatever has happened and grow through it as well. How did you feel?
Hmm.
I know at the point when your doctor told you that you're suffering from depression, you didn't know what it meant at the time. But when you did find out what it meant, how did it make you feel?
I It made me feel like I don't know. I like to find solutions and really like figure things out and solve problems. So when I saw like what it meant, like thinking like, okay, decreased mood and all of this stuff. And I knew that I was at one point before depression. So I felt that there was a way that I could get back to just like the higher energy that I was feeling, just elevated mood. And I started learning. There were some key people or books, I guess, that and like practices that I did to like really help me understand who I am and all of that stuff. But um, with the depression, I was also studying kinesiology and I was in a class about psychology and movement. And we learned about how movement can can bring about benefits for people that are depressed. Like an acute bout of exercise can help somebody elevate their mood and decrease the symptoms of depression. So I thought that was really interesting. And I just knew that there were ways for me to kind of move forward from it. I just kind of accepted it as a challenge in a way, but not necessarily like, all right, like I'm going to beat this depression. It was more like, I was still feeling everything out. I was trying to understand what was going on. I was still trying to put all the pieces together. I was talking to my friends and my family about it. Like, I don't want you to treat me any differently with this going on. I'm just trying to understand for myself. So I was trying to be really open and honest with myself and with them about, can you tell me if there was any moments in time where you felt that you might have thought that I was depressed or felt this energy from me, and
Yeah.
just trying to gather information about, you know, what I was like from an outsider's point of view, like at that point in time, and really just trying to accept like what the situation was and just how can I move forward from it
Wow.
and how can I handle this.
So two important points for the listeners as well. The first one is if you are going through depression, just don't stay stuck in that depressive state. Get out, walk around, go and experience the outdoors and stuff. Because the more you stay in that depressed state, it's not going to really help you, and chances are you're not going to come out from it. You got to move your body. I mean, circulation of the blood is so important for many things, not just for your mind, but it's also healthy just to go out there and walk around and stuff like that as well. And the second part is
100%.
I like the fact that you said you kind of embraced what you were going through, and this allowed you to not stay in the self-pity mindset, because you said to your family members not to treat you any different, to keep treating you the same way that they do treat you, so that you don't have the self-pity or victim mindset or so. It was something that you needed to work on yourself to get to where you are as well. So such an important point that as well. And to the listeners, it's really good advice, and it's coming from someone who's lived this journey. It's not just coming from somebody who didn't experience this. So use this as an opportunity to try and work through yourself as well. We all are work in progresses, right? We are, every single day that we
Yeah.
wake up, we are working on ourselves, and it doesn't stop there.
Yes.
Emily, you and I, we know when going forward, there's going to be more obstacles that we'll encounter in our lives, right? The difference is now we're more well equipped on how to handle those obstacles as well. It's
Yes,
really important.
definitely.
So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
And
Yeah, sorry,
yeah,
Karen.
I just wanted to throw in there because I think it's extremely important to do this and it's very healing. One of the very first thing that I did after the doctor's office instinctively was go be in nature. That's what I did. I didn't really think about it though. I just need to be there. I went to the ocean and I sat there and I kind of reflected and was just kind of with the water. There's like a certain spot where the wave goes into the rocks and then trickles out and it makes this really pretty sound. And that's what I was craving like in that moment. So I just wanted to point that out because it's huge, the impact that nature has on healing.
True. Absolutely. And it allows you to stay grounded as well, right?
Hmm.
Especially even if it's not the ocean, even if it's in the forest or out in your garden or wherever there's grass or so, just go on there barefoot and
Yeah,
just start feeling the ground. That earth energy, it helps us so much in whatever we do as well. So quite
yeah.
important. So find that place. So to the listeners, it will be find a place, a cool, calm place that you like to be at, and just sit there and reflect and try and understand where you are and what's actually going on, and start working towards a solution for it. Because nobody's going to just hand you over the solution.
Hmm.
Wow, Emily, thank you so much for sharing that as well. So
Yeah.
I'm very keen to know about the medications, right? Because okay, let's be honest, modern medication does work to a certain extent, but
Yeah.
I don't want to go into, me personally, I don't want to take medications for the rest of my life. If I can find an alternate, yes, of course, I will go to the doctor or the hospital if I break an arm or break a leg or so. That's different. I can go, but I don't want to live on medications for the rest of my life. But you made this change from moving away from medications. How did you do this, and was it a difficult transition, or what was your experience on it?
Yeah. It's very interesting for me because of that shift that I made. It was difficult being on the medication, I would say, because after a period of time, like it was helping me originally. And I think that medication does work for a certain period of time, but it's really not, to me, it's not a real solution. It's not going to fix anything for you. If anything, from my experience, it causes more problems
Yeah.
for you in the long run. And I started recognizing this when I started developing side effects over a period of time after being on the medication, excuse me. And it reminded me of those commercials you see on TV about this random, like, pharmaceutical drug that they had just created, the shiny new pill, and then they list off all the side effects and like bad things that can happen to you, and it's like a laundry list of symptoms where you're like, I don't want that to happen to me. And a lot of times we don't think that, like, we think that we're invincible. We're like, oh, I'll take this drug and like none of those side effects are going to happen to me. Like that's what I was thinking. I just wasn't even thinking about the bad things that could have happened. And that's not necessarily how you want to live your life either, is like
Yeah.
thinking of the bad things. But those bad things started to appear. And they started causing me more problems than I had truly expected. And I just didn't feel good. I felt more disconnected from myself. And like I said, I didn't feel like I was really fixing the
Yeah.
problem, like getting down to the root of the issue that I had with my distractedness and being ADD. I know that people can cope with that, like not being on medication. I know it's possible. So I felt that I wanted to get to that point, and I slowly decreased what I was taking to a point where maybe I would only take it Monday through Friday, like during the work week or when I had classes. And then I was really, really trying my best not to do it. But at the end of the day, it just came down to what's important to me.
Yeah.
And what's important to me became more and more clear the longer I took that medication because I just didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And there was no like, oh, I'm going to take it Tuesday and Thursday. Like, I just couldn't do that. So at some point, I was like, that's it. I'm done. I kind of had one pill bottle left. I was trying to drag it out
Yeah.
um, for a period of time because I wasn't taking it on the weekends and because it was expensive. The one that I found worked
Mhm.
best for me with no like minimal side effects was costly, and I was tired of doing it. So after that one was gone, I was like, all right, here we go. Like I'm just
Mhm.
gonna see what happens, accept what comes my way, and I'm ready for this challenge of understanding who I am without being on the medication. And I was truly excited to get back to feeling more like myself because I felt that my personality had changed like after taking those drugs. And that's kind of really weird to think about,
Yeah.
like having your personality be altered because of a medication. I just didn't like that thought. It didn't feel good to me at all. And ever since that moment, I have been working to get back to my truest self, my most natural form as best I can.
Wow.
And that became my mission from quitting the medication. And so I don't even like to take over the counter drugs or anything like that.
So that just proves it can be done, right? With the right type of mindset and what you really want. I like the fact that the cost was a deterrent as well, because medications really does cost a lot of money, right?
Mm.
No matter what you take, it's still a cost factor, and you're actually paying to put these toxins into your body. It
Yeah.
just it just don't sit well at all. But I'm glad that you actually worked on it. So you realized that you needed to not just take the medication only because yes, it's a temporary solution. You decided that you needed to work towards the root cause of what was making you feel this way, and that's how you brought in your movement, your exercise, and all of this as well, right? So
Hmm.
it's such an important point, and for the listeners especially, is if you really want to work on yourself, you can work on yourself. You will find the answers. But like Emily did, Emily made that decision that she did not want to stay on, let's call it these drugs for the rest of her life, because really it is drugs. If people think
Hmm.
other drugs, illegal drugs, are dangerous, so is all of these kind of legal drugs as well. Same effect, right? You know
Yeah.
how you felt, you want your
Narcotics.
narcotics, yeah.
Yeah.
and and you're right,
Yeah.
you want yourself. And if you felt like you want yourself, how were other people looking at you when you were kind of like in the drug state, right? Or with this medication in you and all the
Yeah.
effects
I
of-
think it was very confusing because at the same time, like in college, I was drinking alcohol a lot, just being honest.
yeah.
I mean, it's just that was a part of my life at that time. And mixing those two drugs, because alcohol is a drug as well, mixing those two drugs created lots of issues for me. Socially, with the people around me, it made me an aggressive person, which I'm not. That's not
Yeah.
me. That's not who I am. And that was really confusing. So people around me were seeing that. And, they would tell me the next day and they would talk to me and they'd be like, I don't know what's going on with you. Um, like you acted out and you said this and that and you did this. And it was like an out of body experience. I was like, that's not me. That's so weird. Like it was confusing why I would do that. I just was completely out of control of my emotions, my actions, which does not feel good to me at all. I don't think anybody likes to be, I mean, I would hope, but I don't want to globalize either. I don't think that anyone wants to be out of control of their body and their actions and their emotions. And a lot of times we feel like we don't have control, but we really do. And I was really trying to find out, how can I take the control back, because this is not the person that I believe myself to be. That's just not who I am. And I didn't want to accept that. It was really difficult.
I can imagine as well, and especially when you can't remember exactly what happened the previous night, and then you get your friends coming in saying that this is the way you were behaving. I mean, we've all been there at some point in our lives, right? Because, and that's with alcohol alone. Now, imagine now alcohol and the medication. That's like a triple effect, or if not more as
Yeah.
well. And I would think if you had taken much more alcohol and this medication together, it could have led to overdose as well, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mm.
And it's crazy too, because it's like I was logging and looking back, I was logging my experiences like, okay, I've been on alcohol before without the medication, and this is how I was acting and all of that stuff. And then it was looking at, okay, this is how I act on medication and alcohol. And okay, this is how I act on medication alone. It's like looking at myself as
Yeah,
almost like an experiment, just to look objectively at my behavior and what I was, the symptoms that I was having, and what I was feeling during each of these periods of my life, so I could pinpoint what's the cause of this, what's going on, like how can I change
yeah.
this, like, and kind of looking at myself and like all this data that I'm logging
Uh,
from the experiences that I've had.
it's again such a valid point as well. You realized you needed to change, and it didn't come from anyone else, because that acceptance, that acknowledgement, that ownership of yourself is so key to how to who you have become today as well. So I know
Mm.
you've been through a lot of dark periods in your life as well, right? So as a lot of people, but many people don't know how to deal with dark periods. How did you get through some of these as well? I'm sure the listeners would be very interested to understand, what techniques or tools, or how did you come through it?
Hmm. I started to become very aware, when that in that moment that I was told that I was depressed, and I was determined to figure it out myself without the antidepressants. So I started researching on my own natural ways that I could cope with my emotions and things that I was feeling. And meditation was one that kept coming up. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this meditation thing a try. Like I was like very open to any natural way
Yeah,
without putting substance in my body, and like how I could work through things. And I started by I didn't know how to do meditation. I mean, I knew how to do prayer, which also really helped me, but it was the idea of connecting to your breath work that I really wanted to try. So I downloaded an app and I had a guided meditation because I didn't know how to do it. And I would put on my headphones when I felt that I really needed it. And even when I didn't feel like I needed it, but just to try it and see how it made me feel, like the change of my energy from before and after. And I noticed that it created this really positive change for me when, like, just in general. So when I started to feel like negative energy or low or fixated on things that were going wrong,
yeah,
I would open that app and start my breathwork meditation and do it for 5 to 10 minutes or so. And noticing that shift, it just really cleared my head. it definitely elevated my mood afterward too. So there was the meditation, and then there was the physical activity. So I knew that that made me feel really good, and I made it a rule for myself. And I think it's important to, just in terms of making rules, you don't need to listen to anybody else's rules, but
Right.
just really knowing for yourself, like what feels good for you, and what's that rule for you. For me, because I was drinking so much, I made a point to work out the very next morning. That was like something I had to do, and it was my routine. I would wake up, I would go sweat, and I would try to get rid of the toxins
Yeah.
out of my body, because that was just a way that I was kind of mitigating the damage that I was causing, because I knew that drinking wasn't helping. But at the same time, at that point, I wasn't willing to give up drinking. So I just started exercising and sweating it out. Um, and I just knew that, like, at that point, and I didn't, in terms of making changes for myself, knowing that alcohol was an issue, and actively choosing not to give that up, I knew what I was risking.
Yeah.
But making so much change at once, for me, like, at that point in time, I just didn't feel like that was something that I could do. But now at this point in my life, that is now something that I'm working on. Like, I'm not drinking alcohol like nearly as much as I was
That's
before,
good.
and really getting to a point where not at all, because I just know exactly what comes along with drinking
Yeah.
alcohol sometimes, especially for me, and how I react when I drink alcohol. So just finding those things and that I can remove, that I know that these are causing negative things in my life, and then adding in the things that I know are creating positive change in my life to help me continue to move forward, and
Wow.
just connect more with myself.
I like that. Again, self-realization, right? That you needed to remove all of these negative habits, let's call it habits, and replace it with positive habits as well. Because it's also dangerous, like when you have like a heavy drinking night, and if you go the next day to the gym to sweat it out, it could affect your heart and you could kill yourself in that way as well. Because we think that we're
Yeah.
working out the alcohol from our body and the toxins, but we don't know what we're doing to our heart rate at the time and how what more damage we could cause. Because there's been a lot of stats where people have had like a heavy boozy night. The next day they go to gym and they just fall on in the gym as well because they think it's.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you've had a lot of realizations as well, and you've decided to work on it. And I guess this helps the fact that you are doing what you are doing now, all the positive habits. It really helps you manage the stresses that you encounter in life, right?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I take those tools that I learned during that time and the things that I know make me feel good, and I continue to do those things because I know that those are going to be the things that help pull me out from a low, or just help me feel better. But it's also at the same time not just pushing down these emotions, like these negative emotions that you're having. Like, it's still very important to recognize them, accept them as them being there, feeling them, and then doing the things that you need to do to pull yourself out, from that point. Because if you just keep pushing it down, it's going to build up if you just
Yeah.
keep ignoring those feelings, and then it just explodes one day. And that stress over time just chronically shows up in your body as like disease, like later down the line. So if you don't handle these things, and what by I say handle, meaning like just allowing yourself to feel, just having a really healthy emotional, um, solution, or habit that you go through, whether it's writing down, like if something like is really heavy on my mind, I'll grab a piece of paper and I'll write a bunch of stuff down. Whatever's on my head, I'll just write it down, and I'll either tuck it away, never look at it again, rip it up, burn it,
Yeah.
like, just to get it out and really feel whatever that is, like just doing something with intention, I
Exactly.
feel like really helps in the situation. So now when I can sense that certain things coming or something happens with my business and I just don't know what to do and it's overwhelming, I go in nature or I write it down or I meditate. I just kind of reach into my toolbox of all of
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
all of the things that make me feel good, and whatever I need in that moment, I do it, and it really helps.
I love that. So well said, and so much of inner work as well, right? And the part I laughed when you said you write it down and you burn it. I do the same as well at certain points because look, there's so much of negativity in this world. We have to come across negativity all the time, but it's how we deal with it that really helps us to move forward as well. The other thing as well is, and I picked up, is you do a lot of shadow work as well. So when you feel like you are stuck, you dig deep within to try and find these answers as to what's really going
Yes,
on. Why am I feeling this way? And
it's huge.
it's massive, and we were not taught this, and I'm sure you were not taught this growing up either, Emily, right?
Hmm.
We didn't have all of these resources, but the fact that we know it now, we learn it. So many of you listeners out there can benefit from using simple techniques like this as well. The one thing
Hmm.
everyone should realize is that the answers are nowhere else beside within ourselves. We just need to dig deep and find these answers as well, like Emily has done. And look at how she's turned her life around. Uh, Absolutely amazing. So, when we
Thank
talk
you.
about, it's my pleasure. When we talk about turning your life around, right? What does it mean for you now to live the best version of yourself?
Yes, I think about this a lot, and this is how I move forward in my life every single day. I I want to understand, and I want to get to my potential, whatever that means. And because I feel like a lot of people are like, I don't know what that means, but to me, that means just being better or working to be the best person that I can be every single day. And in terms of being kind to others, being kind to myself, especially because that's really important. You got to take care
Yeah.
of yourself before you can take care of others, because if your cup is not full, you have nothing to offer other people. So, really being the best version of me so I can then be the best version for other people, and just striving to just grow all the time, just taking everything that I can learn and just being really open about other people's experiences and what I can learn from them, because you never know like who you're going to meet and how they can change your life, and
True.
just really taking just every interaction that I have and learning from it, and just really truly understanding, how can I be even just a little bit better? Like how people say, how can I be just 1% better or moving forward? Because it can be overwhelming to make like a drastic shift. So as far as just taking the steps further, a little bit each day to just really get to that point. And then when you look back, you're like, wow, I
Yeah.
was here like
Yeah.
5 years ago, and now I'm here, and it's just crazy to think about when you're just working each day to be the best version of yourself.
And that feeling when you reached here from coming from all the way from the bottom, how's that feeling, right?
Yeah, and I think it's really important. It feels really good, and I think it's
Mhm.
really important to also point out that it doesn't just go like this.
Correct. Yeah.
It's a lot of
Always.
this too,
Hmm.
and it's just using those tools and techniques of connecting and learning and understanding who you are to pull yourself back out from
Yeah.
those dips, and because things happen in life that are unexpected and
True.
changes that just come up, and it's just being able to kind of roll with the punches in a way, and just not really thinking of anything as really a
Mhm.
problem, but more of an opportunity to grow and move forward and learn.
Yeah, grow and learn. So, in a nutshell, use any painful moment or any obstacle as an opportunity to grow from it, rather than just go through it. Far too often, people just want to go through situations and not learn from it as well. So, really solid advice, Emily. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for inspiring us today on our show, Inspirational Journeys Through Life with Straight Talk with Nolan. So, any key messages, any tips for the listeners out there? So there's two things. Can you share with us some tip for the listeners, and also how can they get in touch with you? How can they connect with you? We will, of course, share your details at the end of the podcast as a description as well. But if you can tell us, just guide us on those two, please.
Yes. I think one thing that I really wanted to mention but forgot to mention is having a gratitude practice. I think that being really appreciative and looking at all the things that are around you and you yourself, and being grateful for who you are and what you have and what that allows you to bring into your life, rather than focusing on the things that are lacking.
Yeah.
And you could have things that you want in life, and that is healthy to have, but really just still being grateful for everything that's there, and having that gratitude practice is really something that changed my emotions from more negative to more positive. And just at first it might feel weird, but when you start doing it more and more, it gets more abundant, and it just starts to flow to you, and it can really change the game, having a gratitude practice. And then also I can be found, I'd say mainly on Instagram as Emily Nader Fit. And also my website is emilynaderfit.com.
Okay, so it's emilynaderfit.com, right? All one word.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yes.
we'll also type that in the chat for our listeners as well. I like what you said about gratitude, because the more things you are grateful for, the fewer things you should be ungrateful for as well. So really good practice, and one needs to do that every single day of their life, right? Because there's so much we need to be grateful for, so much we should be grateful for, right? It's just amazing. Wow. Thank you so much, Emily. Really so honored to have you on the show today as well. So, to all the listeners out there, if you've liked this episode, if you enjoyed listening to Emily, please, it's going to be on YouTube. Put in some comments that Emily can answer for you, or even questions as well. And if you like this video or the audio as well, be sure to share it with your friends, your family, and to as many people as possible. The whole idea behind this is we all can resonate with each other's stories. And if just by listening to Emily today as well, when she spoke about certain things in her story, I've been there personally as well, especially around the drinking part and the medication a bit. I'm also anti-medication, Emily. I don't like taking it at all. So yeah, there's a lot of golden nuggets that has come up from this chat as well. So feel free to share it and get in touch with Emily as well. emilynaderfit.com, and connect with her as well, even on Instagram. So thank you once again for joining us. This is Nolan Pillay, your host for Inspirational Journeys Through Life with Straight Talk with Nolan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.